Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to May 10th. And this is actually our third series in our May mental health presentation. So we're really delighted to continue to bring you information. And we've had some really positive feedback. And again, what we're trying to do is just provide information throughout the month about mental health and the importance of recognizing the signs of mental health disorders, the importance of taking care of our own mental health. So last week we focused on children's mental health, and we started off actually on May 3rd, which was hearing from some of our youth, and that was really a great presentation and a great conversation led by two of our youth that talked about their own fears, anxieties, coping strategies. It was just really very insightful, very great start to May Mental Health. And then on May 5th, we had Dr. Profilet and Dr. Martin talk about children's mental health. And again, very well received and some great questions. So today we actually have Dr. Profilet again. So thank you, Dr. Profilet. Dr. Profilet is a developmental psychologist with Behavioral Health Services, and myself. And I'm Connie Almeida. I'm a licensed psychologist and also a licensed specialist in school psychology, working with children and families for 35 years. So it's been a while. Actually started out working with very young children and children with special needs. So it's been really a very exciting and fulfilling career. And one of the things I realize is that children, of course, function in families, and so it's really important to take care of our children. We need to take care of our families. We need to take care of our parents, and that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Just how do we support children's mental health and some of the tips for parents. But I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit more and just about what else is going on the rest of this month. So on Wednesday, we actually have our mental health awareness walk. So we are very excited. And if you have a chance, just come out and join us. And it's going to be the walking track, and quarter of a mile, half a mile, whatever you want to do. But it's really this opportunity to come together and to show our support for increasing the awareness around mental illness and reducing the stigma and dispelling some of the myths around mental illness. So 12 to 1, the Fort Bend County Justice Center, and there's a walking track right near the Justice Center. On the 17th, which is a week from now, we're going to have a presentation by Dr. Martin and Dr. Todaro on understanding serious mental illness. May 19th, a presentation by Dr. Todaro and one of our intern students, one of our doctoral intern students on compassion fatigue. May 24th, presentation on fears and anxieties by Christy Lee, who's one of our psychological associates, and myself. And then wrapping up the month on May 26th with a panel discussion by the Fort Bend County Mental Health Task Force. So hope that you can join us for some of those, and especially for the walk. We hope to see you there. Okay, so with that, I am actually going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Profilet. And again, our focus today is talking about how do we support children's mental health and what parents can do. Some of this might be a repeat of some of the things that we've talked about through during the last couple of sessions, but I think it's really important to emphasize the importance of parents taking care of themselves and in order to take care of their children. So we'll talk about that as always. If you have questions, please, either put them in the chat box or I know some of you are joining us on the judge's Facebook page, so we'll try to answer those questions also. So thank you, and Dr. Profilet, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Almeida. As she said, that we're going to be talking today about supporting children's mental health and giving some tips for parents. And so we'll talk a little bit first about what children's mental health is, and then 6 ways that parents can support children's mental health. And then after that, Dr. Almeida will talk a little bit more about commitment to self-care as parents. So let's just start with what is children's mental health. So the things that I'll start with today are about being mentally healthy during childhood, what that means, what some mental disorders in childhood would be and what they look like, and then some common childhood mental disorders. So with a mentally healthy childhood, these are the things that a child would have if they have a mentally healthy childhood. First of all, the child would be reaching their developmental milestones. Developmental milestones are things that a child can do physically, socially, cognitively, emotionally, to be where they are expected to be. Usually a pediatrician will give a list of milestones for each child's age. There's not a specific age that a child has to meet their milestone by. There's usually a range. And so this could be things like walking, crawling, pointing, understanding, the child understanding what their name is when they hear somebody call their name. A child also learns social skills during childhood. So a mentally healthy child has the social skills that are appropriate for their age. These children also learn how to cope when there are problems. If something comes up, they learn how to self-regulate or to control their emotions. And so that's something that children learn during childhood. A child that's mentally healthy can function well at home, in school, and also in the community. So we think of mental health for children as well as for adults as on a continuum. So you can see the picture of the arrows. The continuum consists of social, academic, and daily functioning for children. The continuum goes from optimal functioning on one end to severe impairment on the other. And so it's hard to know if a child is mentally healthy or not sometimes, because there's some types of mental issues that are normal, right? Anxiety is something that is normal in certain situations, and it's not in other situations. And so it's really normal for children to feel worried or anxious from time to time. For example, when they're starting school or if they're moving to a new house, the child might feel some anxiety. Again, that's completely normal. They have this feeling of uneasiness, they're worried, they might have some fears. And if there's a stressful event, then that's very typical that a child would feel some anxiety. The difference between normal anxiety and having an anxiety disorder is the severity of the anxiety. So while feeling anxious is a natural reaction to a stressful event, it becomes a disorder when it interferes with the child's life and the child's functioning and their ability to handle everyday situations. So if they're avoiding something that most children would like to do, then maybe they have an anxiety disorder. So mental disorders in childhood, the definition is serious changes in the way that children learn, behave, or handle emotions, which cause distress and problems getting through the day. So there's many different common mental disorders in childhood. These include attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, which most people have heard of, anxiety, again, like we just discussed, and behavior disorders. There's other childhood disorders that include learning and developmental disabilities, the autism spectrum disorder, or substance abuse and self-harm, more so in older children. So if symptoms are serious and persistent with school, home, or play activities, the child may be diagnosed with a mental disorder. Rarely will a child under the age of 5 receive a diagnosis of a serious behavior disorder, but they might start to show some symptoms, and that disorder might be diagnosed later. So what can parents do to support children's mental health? So I'll be talking about these 6 different things that parents can do. One is the parents can build relationships for the child. I'll talk about how parents can do that. Parents can promote resilience in their child. Parents can create healthy habits for their children, and parents can provide support for their child. Parents also need to take care of themselves. And if parents are concerned about their children's mental health, they can seek professional help. So starting with building relationships, it's very important for parents to build relationships for their children. So there's 3 different types of relationships that I'll talk about. The first one is the child's relationship with the parent. So your relationship with your child. And so it's really important to build trust, have the child feel safe and secure with the parent. So the parent-child relationship is a very important relationship, but it's not the only relationship. So parents can also work on the child's relationships with other family members. So the parents can have the children interact with their grandparents, with their cousins, with their siblings. And those are very important relationships to have as well. Some children might not have siblings or cousins, and that's okay too. But if they have those, then that's a really good way to work on relationships with those people in their life. And then parents also need to work on relationships with the children's friends and neighbors. And so it's really good for children to have a best friend. And so at different ages, there's different things that parents can do. So in early childhood, parents can work on teaching children how to share. Now they could teach them how to share with their siblings or with their friends. Same thing, taking turns. And so these things are difficult for children to learn because they don't want to share. They might not want to take turns. And so parents need to really teach these things to their children. Developing friendships with peers, that can happen, as early as age 2 or 3, that they can have friendships. And then they can make a best friend when they're at the preschool ages. Between 3 and 5, children can have a best friend, which really helps a child to learn a lot of these things. They learn how to cooperate. They really, they want to keep their friends, then they have to learn how to take turns and share and also be mindful of other people. So those things are really important in early childhood. Parents can also promote resilience in their children. And the definition of resilience is the ability to steer through serious life challenges and find ways to rise above adversity. So the child needs to adapt, remain strong, and bounce back. So as parents, we want our children to persevere when there are problems and to bounce back from adversity. When children are resilient, they're braver, they're more curious, and they're more adaptable. So if you never face hard times, you're probably not going to become brave. But so you learn from adversity. Children learn from adversity on how to problem solve. And the children learn to become more adaptable. Adaptable means quickly learning skills, new skills and behaviors in response to changing circumstances. So if you think about what's happened in the past year with COVID-19, children have probably learned to become more resilient. And it's not something that parents want for their children to have to suffer, not go to school during COVID-19. But because of, having some stress, children can become more adaptable. I think a lot of children have learned skills during COVID-19 that they probably wouldn't have learned otherwise. I think adults have learned skills too on how to do Zoom and how children can work from home and how children can adapt to their situations. And I think it was difficult to adapt, but I think a lot of people now, hopefully coming out of COVID a little bit, have really come out different than they were before. The children probably have adapted and learned how to deal with things that they hadn't even known about. Another thing that parents can do to build resilience in children is think about their protective factors. Protective factors are skills, resources, supports, or coping strategies that help people deal with stressful events. So in children can develop social skills, as we talked about before. That's how to act in social situations, and parents really need to teach children how to act when they're with their friends, when they're in a restaurant, when they're with a teacher, so that they know how to interact with other people. It's the same thing with communication skills. Parents really need to work on that with children so that as the children get older, they're able to communicate with other people outside the home. So if the children never get out, never talk to any other adults, then they won't know how to talk to adults. I would say an example of this that I think of is my daughter learned how to golf. And so my husband would always take her golfing, and they would get paired up with usually a couple of old men to golf with. And so my daughter, as a teenage girl, she really had to learn social skills and communication skills to learn how to golf and talk to these people that she didn't know before. She probably thought she had nothing in common with these older men that she was golfing with. And now she's 21 years old and she's a nurse, and she communicates with her patients just so easily that, she probably doesn't have a lot in common with a lot of her patients, but she knows how to communicate with people. I think that's really helped her a lot. And that's something that I think that my husband really taught her on the golf course. Having a positive attitude, again, is something within the child that the parents can really work on with the children, how to keep a positive attitude, even when things are going wrong. Sometimes you have to look on the bright side. And then last, having confidence. That's something within the child that they feel confident because they've been able to do something difficult. And so if you can do hard things, then it would develop confidence. There's also protective factors within the family. So these are things that parents can really work on with their children to develop resilience. And so harmony and stability has to do with having the parents teach the child to get along with other people and not always argue, not fight about everything. Sometimes you disagree with people, but that's okay to disagree and just keep it under control and not have, anger or come out when you're interacting with other people. Supportive parenting means having your child's best interest at heart, also being present, involved, helpful with your child. It includes encouraging them to do their best at different activities and in school. Teaching stress management is supportive parenting. Another thing that parents can do is have family values. And family values are cultural values that pertain to the family structure, function, roles, beliefs, and attitudes. And so every family has different values. And I think that if the children learn what the family values, then that's going to really help the child get through their life better. The next one is warmth and affection. And that really helps the child have positive outcomes. If the parent really shows a lot of warmth and shows affection and healthy touch to the children, they'll have higher self-esteem, they'll have better academic performance, and better parent-child communication if there's some affection in that relationship. And then finally, another protective factor is consistency. So children crave predictability and they crave structure. It's important for parents to have a daily routine, keep a calendar, plan a fun day, one night a week, have a game night, have a movie night. Children want to know what's going to happen next. So they want that consistency. They want to know what will happen. They want to know what will happen if they break the rules. They want to know what the consequences are. Related to this is something that we call trust-based relational intervention, or TBRI. You can Google TBRI. It comes from the Karen Purvis Institute of Child Development at TCU. So it comes from Texas Christian University right here in Texas. And so if you Google TCU and then the initials of TBRI, you can really get a lot of good information for families. And it's really parenting tools for all children. So that's something that's really helpful for parents. Parents also can model resilience. And so parents need to model resilience in their own lives. So parents need to think about, how do they handle situations? How do they connect to family and friends? How do parents make good choices, contribute to the community, cope with stress, and adapt to changing situations? So I know a lot of times parents say, do as I say, not as I do, but that doesn't work. So parents really need to think about what they do, because children will imitate what their parents do. And children often grow up to have similar beliefs, behaviors, and attitudes as their parents. So if parents are really, handling situations and making good choices, then the children will likely do the same. Next are healthy habits that parents can teach their children. And so healthy diets are important for children to learn how to eat healthy. It will make them feel better. It will help their mental health as well as their physical health. Children also need a good night's sleep. It's important for children to get the right amount of rest. And so there's different amount of time that children need to sleep depending on their age. So young children take naps. Older children don't need naps, but they still need a good night's sleep. This really helps their brain development. And if they don't have enough sleep, they could become overactive, irritable, have a hard time listening, have a hard time staying awake during school. So they really need a bedtime routine as well. So about 30 minutes before a child goes to bed, it's really good to just kind of wind them down, take a bath, read books, brush their teeth. That will help them to fall asleep and have a good night's sleep. Children also need exercise, and you would think that would help their physical development, but it also helps their mental development. It can improve their focus, school performance. Exercise can help people sleep, and it also helps their energy levels. So the same thing for adults and children, right? The more you get to exercise, the better you'll sleep at night, the more focus you'll have when you're at work. So it's the same for children and parents. And so children who have regular exercise, if they join a team, they'll have better relationships. They'll learn a lot from being involved in sports. Parents also need to provide support for their children, teach and reinforce positive behaviors and decision-making. So parents need to provide genuine, realistic praise. If the child is doing something well, it's okay to say that they're doing a good job. Make it very specific to what the child is doing. Give opportunities for independence. If the child can make their own lunch, have the child make their own lunch. They can do that. They can make sandwiches. They can cut up fruit, depending on their age. Again, they'll have different things that they can do independently. The parents can provide consistent expectations and support. Tell the child what they expect from them. If parents have high expectations, the children will be more likely to live up to their expectations. Parents also, again, teach children social skills, problem solving, and conflict resolution when playing with peers or siblings. And then healthy self-talk is something that's also important for parents to do with their children. When your child says negative things, ask what they can do better. Help your child draw healthier conclusions instead of just saying that they can't do something. So examples of negative self-talk are, I can't score any goals when I play soccer. I never have fun because I'm not very good at this. So it's really easy to get down when a child is comparing themselves to other children. Maybe there's other kids that are better at soccer and the child's saying negative things about themselves. So it's important for parents to help their children come up with better ways of thinking and talking about themselves. So if the child is down after playing soccer, or they're not happy about how they played, find out what's wrong, reassure the child, help them choose a more positive statement, and say something like, I'm a strong and helpful teammate, or I'll practice and try again. I think that's really good for children, whether they're doing schoolwork or doing sports. Instead of saying negative things about themselves, that parents can really help them, encourage them to say more positive things. Taking care of yourself is also important. I'm going to just mention this, and then Dr. Almeida will talk a little bit more about taking care of yourself. Self-care is one of the best things that you can do for your child's mental health, is taking care of yourself. So whether it's time alone, saying no to some things, forgiving yourself, relaxing, those things will really help. If you take care of yourself, then that will really help your children as well. These are especially important because of the uncertainty of COVID-19. If you or your partner have a mental health problem, it's really good for you to get treatment. And so that will help the child as well. Self-care also has to do with having supportive relationships, whether that's family or friends. If the parents have support, that really helps the child as well. Parents also need to set clear limits and boundaries, and so the children know what to expect. And boundaries are important for children so they're not involved in every single adult decision, that the parents need to have some time that is adult time, and the children don't need to be involved in all that. And then maintain balance. That's part of self-care. And then lastly, I just want to mention seeking professional help. So if you have concerns about your child and about, any behavior problems or anxiety, if the child seems like they're sad or depressed, if you're really concerned, you can talk to your school psychologists or counselors, social workers at the school, or talk to the pediatrician. And so the pediatrician can advise parents on what to do next. And now I'll hand it over to Dr. Almeida for her commitment to self-care.
Thank you, Dr. Profilet. I just wanted to kind of maybe reinforce a couple of points that are just so important. This seeking professional help, like, when do we know, is my child just sad, or is this normal sadness, or, is this something I really should try to get some help for? So it's really one of Dr. Profilet's original earlier slides talked about this continuum. For many years, I worked with children that had attention deficit disorder. And, one of the diagnostic criteria is that the behavior really needs to be present in more than one setting. So I think it's like, it's always like, for example, if your child's just anxious in school, or if your child's just anxious at home, or, it's maybe that's more situational. And, and then you can look at what's going on in that particular segment. I'm not saying that they don't necessarily need professional help, but that helps you maybe try to have a better understanding of what's going on with them. Of course, then if you have a child that, is just really persistently sad, at school and at home, and, doesn't want to play with friends, or, really starting to be more withdrawn. Those are the kinds of things that we really have to pay attention to. Um, I think with COVID, that's definitely one of the things that we've seen, is that this pandemic not only has it exacerbated, maybe conditions, low level conditions that existed, it's made it worse. But also, children that before, didn't have anxiety about school, and they didn't have anxiety about friends, and now do. I mean, things have changed. And as Dr. Profilet said, one of our protective factors, coping strategies, what we all need, especially children, are those routines and that consistency. And again, we've said this before, but obviously this pandemic has really impacted that. And the things have changed for children. Things have changed for parents. The routines that existed don't exist. Things are different. And that clearly has had an impact on children, and on parents. But, that's why we're seeing a lot more anxiety disorders, related to school, just anxiety disorders in general, and also, more of the depression, the mood disorders. So again, really paying attention to those things. Um, Dr. Profile referred to TBRI, trust-based relationship interventions, again, that have been developed by TCU, Texas Christian University. Those are great resources for parents. She also talked a little bit about protective factors within the family, and, that ability to show affection. And sometimes that's hard when there's a bunch of stressors going on. But that's one of the things that you can find in those TBRI videos, is really kind of healthy touch, and the importance of, touching children, and healthy touch, and that physical contact. Again, that's been challenging because of the pandemic, but really, really important. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and reinforce some of those important things. Okay, let me, when I was thinking about what to talk about, it was, I actually came across this presentation on compassion fatigue and preventing burnout. So for individuals that are taking care of others, but it was interesting because all of a sudden I was like, well, parents are always taking care of somebody else. And we never really talk about compassion fatigue with parents. And not only are they often taking care of their children, but they're also taking care of maybe their parents. And we know that. So parents, I believe, are one of the most vulnerable populations, groups, to really suffer from this compassion fatigue. So this was just some things to think about, like, how do we prevent this? How do we prevent this burnout? So this becoming more aware, having balance and connections, which again, Dr. Profile already talked a lot about this, the importance of connections and social supports and all that, but we just wanted to reinforce this. So next slide, please. So just this awareness, like our ability to function is all of a sudden changes, things that normally we could handle pretty well really become traumatic events. And I know that I've experienced this. And, I actually had to take a couple of days off because things that normally, whether it's an email from a staff person or somebody else, things that normally I could handle really well became real triggers for me. And, I could feel that compounded stress. But just think about this with parenting, things that normally you could handle, whether it's your child being sick and having to make alternative daycare arrangements. Well, all of a sudden, with daycare, every time that your child has a runny nose, you have to make alternative daycare arrangements, so whereas before you didn't. Now, so things can become much more traumatic. We're tired, and we're not able to process, we're not able to self-regulate as well as we were. So parents are often, struggling with their own physical health and mental health and sleep deprivation and, managing multiple tasks for themselves and for their children. And so you think about, just the toll that takes on you. Think about also this whole notion about hypervigilance. It happens a lot, like with first responders. They always have to be hypervigilant. You always have to be ready to respond, kind of this fight or flight mode. What we've heard is a lot of individuals feel that way in this pandemic. It's like because you can't. We're all very fortunate that there's we are getting back to some normalcy, whatever that means, and that for the past year we have all been hyper vigilant, trying to figure out what's safe and not safe, and so that takes a lot of energy. So again, just very, very important to recognize that. So this awareness of, becoming frustrated, irritated easily, waking up tired and being tired. That's what we hear a lot from families, that they're just tired. They're waking up tired, or you're not getting enough rest. And again, with our first responders, and we also hear this. So, okay, next slide. So this balance, so kind of this ABCs of prevention. And I think this is a really important thing, mini escapes. Any sort of vacation right now, like, I think has to be redefined because things are just much more difficult. Getting on a plane is much more difficult. Going anywhere is much more difficult. And, also it might not be safe to do those things. So how do we create those mini escapes? So we talk a lot about self-care, and those mini escapes are different for individuals. Some individuals and some parents really, it can just be having that quiet time to themselves, where they can quiet the noise around them and just, read a book, listen to music, or just be quiet. Other ones need to really have that, exercise or being outside or the gardening. But these mini escapes are really, really critical. So the nurturing yourself by including activities in your schedule that are sources of pleasure. Again, this doesn't have to be things that cost money. So if it's, planting, cooking, we've seen that. Everybody, gardening has become a really, I think everybody's, buying plants, planting plants. And, somebody once told me, you can't be depressed if you're planting flowers. I really agree with that. It's kind of their incompatible behaviors, but things that do something that is a source of pleasure, calling a friend, the quiet time alone, and this awareness of what restores and replenishes you, because it's very different for each one of us. For example, when I feel anxiety, I've tried things like, breathing exercises and meditating. It doesn't work that well for me because it just doesn't. It's not how I'm wired. For me, it really is much more of a physical activity, like going for a walk or going for a jog. That's what restores, what replenishes me. I have to be outside. So think about what restores and replenishes you. And know and focus on what you can control. This is very difficult because I think for the last year, we really have struggled with this, things that we have control over. And there's been a lot of unpredictability. There's been a lot of things that we can't control. We can't control anybody else's behavior. But, what can we control, and really focusing on that. Next slide. So I don't know. I might ask some people to maybe put it in the chat box if they can, because I can see the chat. So if you can actually write this down, list one thing that brings you joy. I'm going to see how many things I can actually get in the chat. So just think about that. Just one thing that brings you joy. Dr. Profilet, I might have to call on you since I'm trying to see who's going to. Okay, so spending time with my family brings me joy. What else? One thing that brings you joy. For me, it's clearly spending time with my grandchildren brings me joy. Helping somebody else brings me joy. However, that can also, I have to be careful with that because that's that compassion fatigue. If I'm always helping someone else, at some point I am going to get burnt out. Playing golf with my son brings jazz music. Right. Another person said children. Yeah. So think about this. List one mini escape or diversion that worked well to restore or replenish you. Just a mini escape or diversion that worked well to restore or replenish you. Let's see what we get. So going to the gym, getting a massage, okay, shopping, Jamaica, volunteering, walking. It's great. So those are actually some things that don't cost money, because there's a lot of people out there struggling. So really thinking of those things that that we can do. And I like the mini escape. So walking, volunteering, anything else? Okay. So name 3 things that you are grateful for today. So, and somebody said reading too. Family, job, and being alive. What else? My health, my job, and my family. I think that's one of the things that we've all become much more grateful for, our health, and being alive. I'm very grateful for the work that I get to do. It's very important to me. Sometimes very difficult, but very grateful for that. My job, my family and friends, and the support I receive. Okay, so what made you laugh today? So what made you laugh today? My son, seeing a child laugh, seeing my child laugh. So I actually had uh, just a funny text message from a friend, and it started out being so serious, and then it was just a joke, and it was great. It was just, it just kind of released the tension and made me laugh. Tend to be a little too serious all the time, so laughing is it's really hard for me. It's just I think it's really important, but it's definitely a challenge for me. Anybody else? What made you laugh today? Okay. Okay. Oh, that's funny, Allison. Okay. So then if we go, so just kind of sometimes thinking about those things, like really, taking time to laugh and really taking time, to recognize what you are thankful for. I know it sometimes seems trivial, but being intentional about those things is really important. Let me just kind of talk a little bit about that, because one of the things that we've learned through this pandemic is things that normally we could do with little effort, including self-care, take a lot more effort. So we have to be intentional about this. So, Dr. Profilet was talking about the healthy self-talk and, really when children are saying, especially when kids are really saying negative things about themselves or something negative happened to them, really, being intentional to talk about the positive and focus on the positive. And that is so critical. I saw my daughter do this and I was just so impressed because my 3-year-old granddaughter was, saying she had a bad day at school because her little friend wouldn't share, something like that. And I immediately went into trying to process that, and it was just wrong. It was like, whereas my daughter just said, "Oh, tell me what your friends did to make you laugh, or what silly things happened." And that just was a perfect, like, redirection to some positive behaviors. And I think that's really, really important. I mean, and there's a balance. Like, if a teenager is telling you that they had a really bad day, you of course want to listen and process that. But, um, we also need to be mindful and intentional to about focusing on the positive things that are going on. It's always that balance. But I just wanted to mention again that this self-care is taking more effort, and we really have to be intentional about this, almost reminding us of those things on a daily basis. So these connections, which Dr. Profilet talked about in terms of our protective factors, um, talk out your stress with someone who's supportive. Sometime, friends are amazing. Having that one or two friends, those safe places where you can just go, this made me feel really bad. You know, they're not going to fix it, But knowing that you have a safe place to talk about that is really critical. Same thing, building a positive support system that supports you. Pets are great. And of course, for many of us, our faith is a really strong connection. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, this has also been an area where people have not had, the opportunities to worship like they're used to. So, individuals have, of course, made modifications and, virtual worshiping. Um, but what we realize as human beings is, that importance of having those connections and that physical presence is so critical for our wellness. Okay, next page. So just commitment to self-care, walk the dog, exercise. Doesn't mean you have to go out and do a marathon. Just do something, pray, meditate, write a journal, deep breathing, listen to music, cook, eat healthy, do something outdoors, gratitude and reframing. All of these are challenges, but if we can do them on a regular basis, it really helps us stay focused. It helps us regulate, and it also helps us model for others um, good mental health and good coping strategies, which are so important for parents to model for their children. Now, with that said, is the stress of parenting has been compounded by this pandemic. So it's important for parents to get help when they need help. Either help from friends, family, like I need help. I can't do this by myself right now. Um, or professional help to help deal with some of the additional stressors that are going on in their own life. So I think that is all that I have. And I don't know if we have any questions. Dr. Profilet, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that's all great. I think that different people have different ways of taking care of themselves. So with this list, as I was looking down the list, some of these things really help me and some things, don't help me. So you need to really make it personal, like walking my dog. He doesn't want to take walks anymore because he's too old. So walking the dog is actually more stressful for us now. But, when he was younger, it was a really good thing to do, right? So it just kind of depends on your situation and, what is helpful to each individual person is what they need to really work on. So.
Yes. And again, I just wanted to, reinforce just some suggestions for parents. It's like, if you are worried about your children, I mean, you are the experts on your child. You know your children better than anybody else. Talk to somebody, you can start by talking to, as Dr. Profilet said, your child's pediatrician, a friend. We have lots of information on our website. There's some amazing websites out there on child development and mental health resources. We're here also, you can find our information. You can email us. It's vhsdept@fortbendcountytx.gov. Our phone number is 281-238-3079. Go to our website. So definitely reach out to somebody if you have questions, if you're concerned. Children's mental health is real. We talked about this before, impacts up to 20% of the children. We're seeing an increase due to this pandemic. We're seeing more kids more children, more pediatric visits in the ER. We're seeing more children having to be hospitalized in psychiatric hospitals. Unfortunately, we've also seen some increased suicide rates in certain areas. We're seeing more anxiety. So mental health disorders are real. They do impact children. They impact families. And unfortunately, there's been such stigma and such barriers to getting care for children and families that, what is it, like only 20% of the children that have a mental health disorder are actually seen by a mental health professional. That is something we're trying to do, is to change that, because really the first step to anything, to any change, is that awareness. Being aware, knowing what to look for in our children and ourselves is really that first step to change. So we thank you for joining us. If there aren't any other questions or comments, I have no problems ending early so people can maybe go have lunch for 10 minutes. Do you have anything else, Dr. Profilet?
No, the only one little thing that I could think of is that, even if it's not your own child, if it's somebody else's child that you're concerned about. I had somebody call me about that a few weeks ago, and they were concerned about a neighbor child, and they said, what do I do? It's not my child. And so I said, well, I think it's good to just talk to the parent of that child and just say that you're concerned. You're not the expert on this, but that you notice these behaviors and it's something that's concerning, and just give some empathy to that parent. Maybe they're having a hard time, and maybe they can talk to somebody at the school, or maybe they already have, right? So it just, I think just to be able to show some concern for other people too that might be going through something.
Yeah. No, and we're very fortunate in Fort Bend County. I mean, there's a lot of resources, but we also have a behavioral health services department, and so we have licensed individuals on staff, and so we can always, answer some questions, direct you to care, direct you to other resources, and really help you navigate the system to getting the help that you need. I think most folks know this, but we don't charge for services, and our whole commitment is to helping individuals recover, stay healthy, stay out of our criminal justice system, keep children and families together, and really support this wellness of our community. So again, in Fort Bend County, we're very fortunate that we actually have a department to help address these issues. So reach out to us if you need it, and if we can't help you directly, we will definitely connect you with someone that can. Thank you.
Thank you.